We're forced to partake in this false energetic structure. It's a false narrative of life. Hi guys, how's it going? Welcome to Going Dotty. I'm Tracy Egan, and in today's video within the Ego series, we want to be looking at the consequences for us when we are engaging and held in relationships with egos. So let's crack into it. One of the observations that we can make about when we're caught in a dynamic or in a structure with an ego is that that relationship, it affects us in the moment when we're in presence with the ego, but it also affects us after the moment. Coming at this from the internal perspective and how it affects us internally within our being, within our core, we can break this down to our mental body, energy, and our emotional body system. So much about human relationships is about connection. So when we're engaging with an ego, when we're living within flow with an ego, both our mental energy and our emotional structure and sense of self really gets a knocking through the way that the ego treats us. Mentally, it's very unsafe because we're left on a very shaky ground when we're interacting with an ego. We're not really sure what's going on. We're not sure what's happening. The space that we're operating in with an ego, it's not a shared consensus reality, it's a false reality. It's a fake energetic system where we are being forced to uphold truths, situations, or a narrative that we don't agree with. We are being forced into a role. We are being forced to uphold a situation or a context, and we often don't even realize exactly what's going on. So it's very much this false energy. It's this fake energy. And to put it quite simply, it's not real life. It's not the real world. And yet when we are being forced to engage with that as if it is real life and as if it is the real world, this affects other areas and layers of our life as well. It's not, unfortunately, a situation where we can live in a false reality and pretend as if the things that have happened haven't happened, or the things that are going on aren't going on. If we're not dealing with reality, if we're not engaging with reality as reality truly is, that quite simply is a massive problem. The efforts that we make aren't really going anywhere. The normal results or consequences that would come about from our efforts aren't going to fall around back in time for us. So engaging in a false reality and in an illusionary world is quite simply a waste of our resources. But at the same time, it's very difficult for the mental body to sustain, and our mental energy to sustain, a real life and a real world and a real grounded element of things. When we're engaging with an ego, they're very dishonest, they gaslight, they invalidate. This can really affect our psychology, but even on a more simple level, we don't know what's really going on. We don't know what's true or what's not true, what's real or what's not real. The ego, with its dual level of consciousness, it has a surface level interaction, but then it has another secondary narrative that it's running in its headspace. Its intentions towards us and towards other people aren't honest, they're not upstanding, and they're not for our own best benefit. So when we're engaging in these kinds of toxic dynamics and toxic situations, the energy that an ego will throw at us, will drop around us, they're not quality elements to be engaging with and to be dealing with. One of the things that we can say about human interactions is that so much of it comes down to the connection. How connected do we feel with another person? And all of the secondary elements that come from that. Do we trust them? How can we interact with them? Do we have a healthy, good, positive relationship? Is this not such a positive relationship? Does it drain my resources in some way? Does it take my energy? What we find when we're in relationship with an ego is that we're essentially living and we're partaking. We're forced to partake in this false energetic structure. We're forced to partake in this false energetic structure. It's a false narrative of life. It's a false narrative of life. It's all of the effort that you are putting in the moment. When you are there and when you are present, what you are bringing to the field in that moment in time, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. There's a real lack of uncertainty. And this stems from the basic dishonesty of the ego has a dual level of consciousness. It has a surface level interaction, which is often what we respond to. We respond to what's being displayed to us and we take it at face value. We put our best foot forward. But what you find in the long run is that that's all a bit of a lie. It's all a bit of an illusion. It's not real. It's not true. It's not meant. The ego isn't going to uphold the things that it says that it's going to do. You're not going to be able to rely on them as a solid structure and person in your life and in your world. So really mentally this can keep us on really shaky ground, and we can be very uncertain of what's happening and become very unconfident within ourselves. When we have these relationships with one or two people in our personal lives or in our professional worlds, these are going to affect us in other areas of our life and our world as well. One of the things about our conscious structure and our mental body structure is that our mental energy becomes very efficient. So as soon as we recognize a pattern in one place and space within our life and our world, we are very much more likely to repeat that pattern elsewhere again. And if that pattern isn't good for us, if it doesn't work best for us, that is something that's really unfortunate that we have to deal with the repercussions of. So the patternation that we can learn, the roles that we can be forced to accept under an ego, do indeed affect other places within our life and within our space. As well as questioning the very basic structure of reality and what is actually going on for us, we also find the emotional detrimental effects of being in a relationship dynamic with an ego. You know, not only on an emotional level do we not have emotional security with somebody, we're not emotionally safe, we're not able to open up, we can't rely on them. What also happens is we find that we can't open our feminine, emotional, energetic systems. We find that we're not willing or able to open up into the flow in the moment. We don't really have access to our own space. Well, why haven't I like this? Why haven't I feeling the way that I want to feel? Why haven't I being my normal self? And we often shoulder a lot of the blame and the responsibility because we are upholding that responsibility role for the ego. We end up holding and manifesting the elements on behalf of the ego. And this is one of the ways that the ego really hampers our life and our world, because this closes down, it fills up our system so that we're not running our system for ourselves. And it also closes down the movement that we can bring to that part of our system. So an awful lot of this can be described or defined by the term like energy vampire. You know, people are stealing, they're stealing your energy, they're stealing your chi, your life force vitality, the invisible particles that bring us alive within life and bring us alive into the world. And what we find with the ego doesn't know how to access these particles. It doesn't know how to open up into that space because it is not fulfilling the threshold or the requirements. We really can feel like we're being ghosted in real time as well when we're with an ego. You know, the ego doesn't see us, it sees through us. It's not looking at us, it's looking around us or behind us. So we can be there in the moment with somebody and we can be wondering, like, where am I? Because we're being invalidated in real time. The ego does not hold in its mind's eye a sense of our presence. And we very much feel that in the dialogue that goes on and the interaction that goes on between us and an ego. That's some of the ways, some of the internal consequences of having an ego in our world and in our life space. But in the external, we can also see that this very much affects us within our aura and our energy field. As mentioned, we might experience that because we're wondering, where did our good energy go? We were in a good mood, now it's gone. Where is it gone? Why can't I get it back? Part of the reason of that is because when we lose energy to the ego, it's up to us to rebuild that energetic resource within ourselves. So this is where processing comes into place. We step away from these moments and situations, we think about it, we deconstruct what occurred, we re-establish, and we understand with a new layer of perspective what really went on. And we go through the whole system of processing which we'll talk about later on within the healing series. But what we can generally say about the ego is that it really hampers our aura. It diminishes our space. When you're being, let's say, projected on by an ego, the ego projects into your personal space its narrative. And in that moment, your personal space evaporates and disappears. And it can be very confusing an experience to understand and to catch it in real time as well. But it simply washes us out. And we can't move because we don't have access to our own natural space. And the ego doesn't really provide any space for us to move in either. The ego is only holding expectation when it is projecting on somebody else. So you can really feel like you're operating within this void. You're not sure what's going on. You're not sure what's happened. And this is one of the reasons why learning about this kind of stuff can really be very beneficial when it's needed. The ego can really diminish our space, and it somehow makes our own life not really our own. And that's not good for anybody. This is some of the other reasons why we just want to be dealing with what's going on with the ego, because we really have to have our own best interests, our own health, our personal health, our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, our physical health. Because not only does the ego affect us within our space, but it also affects our future creative potential. You know, if we don't have our own energy to work with and build on, then we don't have that energy later on when we need it. There's a lot of invisible resources that we need to be able to create in this world, to hold ourselves a certain way and to enact so that we get things done. And what we find with an ego is the ego takes all of these particles from us. It's slow and it's insidious, but our system is a whole system. So if there is darkness and shadow in our inner life and our inner worlds, or in our external life and our external world coming from an ego, because we are caught in a dynamic with an ego, because our energy is being sucked from us, it's being taken from us, it's being siphoned, this is going to have effects on the rest of our system as well. Thanks very much for joining me today on this video. I hope you found it useful. Please do let me know in the comments below if there's anything else that you'd like me to get into more specifically. Like the video if it's been useful, because that's a really good biofeedback tool, and please subscribe to the channel if you found that it is of use to you. I hope to see you guys again, and I'll talk to you soon.